Welcome, everyone, to the Find Your Flow podcast by Highland Yoga, hosted by founder Elsie Brotherton and co-hosts Reedy Dukes and Annalie Burke. Highland Yoga is an Atlanta-based hot yoga studio founded in 2015 in the quaint neighborhood of Virginia Highlands. And it's hard to wrap our minds around just how much we've grown and evolved since then. We already know our community is hooked on whatever magic is within our walls, and we want to offer you more outside of that. We can't wait to dive deep into all things yoga and wellness, but more importantly, what makes our world go round: our teachers, our devoted students, our community offerings, and more. Hey everyone, thank you for tuning in this week to Find Your Flow podcast. I'm your host, Reedy Dukes, and I'm excited to have Tj Mangrum here this week. TJ, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And we are going to talk about habits, and we really haven't had much preview to this topic together, so I'm kind of excited just to see where it goes. And I know that TJ is very knowledgeable and experienced in many areas, but let's just get straight into it. TJ, how are you doing? What's on your mind?
I'm great. Talking about habits is on my mind. This podcast. I'm a little nervous, but it's good.
You should not be nervous. I know many of our students will be excited to hear from you. Should we define what a habit is? Should we backtrack even more? What do you think?
Well, let me start with saying that I like disclaimer. I'm not an expert. I'm not a philosopher. I'm not a scientist. I've just read a lot of other people's opinions about what we're going to talk about today. I've read a lot of other people's experiences about what we're going to talk about today. So this doesn't come from a place of a disciplined study as far as a structured study. This is just bits and pieces of information I've gathered throughout my journey through self-observation.
Yeah. And that's another form of learning, really, is to talk about it and to teach others. So it kind of fits in.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the first time I really started thinking about habits, I was reading this book by Red Hawk. And in it, he talked about one part that really stood out to me is he talked about mammalian habits, how as mammals, we have these certain traits for survival, these certain habits that we adapt for survival. And what he says is that like a herd of animals, as they travel around, they are reliant on habits that they learn from the previous leaders of the herd, or they're the older members of the herd, the habits that they had so that they could survive. But we are different than, let's say, a herd animal, and that we have the capacity to watch our habits. And I think what I want to speak to today is the habits that we have that are intertwined with our subconscious thinking mind. Instead of consciously engaging with the world around us, the disengaging and letting the subconscious mind take control of what's going on.
Gotcha. So do you want to share how that applies to you and your journey, maybe?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a lot of what I'm learning or what I'm reading and what I've experienced myself through my own types of therapy that I do, is that a lot of my subconscious patterning stems from surviving as a child. So a lot of the ways that I have programmed myself to survive stem from an 8-month-old, a 3-year-old, a 7-year-old, a 15-year-old. But I'm 42 now. I don't need to use the same patterns and habits that I adopted as a 3-year-old to survive. So my task right now for myself is to unlearn these subconscious rules that I've set for myself. It's kind of like they say we spend 95% of our day operating through our subconscious patterning, and only 5% of our day consciously engaging with life, with living. And that's like a lot.
That's scary to think about.
Right? Well, okay, here's an example. So driving, right? Let's say that I'm driving to the studio. I have a route that I take. And if I don't put it in my Google Maps, I'm going to take the same route I normally take. I'm not going to think about it. I'm not going to think about, oh, they're building a bridge over here that can cut down 10 minutes on my route to the studio. I'm not going to think about, oh, school's back in session. They're going to cause me to have more traffic. Maybe I should go a different route. I'm generally going to choose to operate through my patterning, because stepping off of our patterning is a conscious engagement. It's a conscious choice, and it's a change. And as humans, we tend to avoid change. So let's say I'm going to the studio, I'm going on my same path as always. How many times do I do that and I'm not recognizing how many stop signs I went through, or recognizing I took a left at that light, or recognizing merging onto 400? It takes conscious engagement with that travel plan to recognize all of those moves. Otherwise, I'm in la la land listening to my playlist that I'm about to play in class or something, or listening to a podcast, which is fine. Another example would be with operating from our subconscious patterning and how it's necessary is like driving. So if I'm driving a car, it's not doable for me to think, press the gas, press the brake, look in my side mirror, rear view mirror, what's going on with my radio, where's the line to not cross, is that a person crossing the road, is that a puppy, oh my gosh, look at that, that is a puppy, that's a cute puppy, look at that puppy. Like, I can't do all of that at the same time consciously engaging with all of it. Like, I don't think to press the brake, I don't think to press the gas, I don't think to turn the wheel just a little bit to avoid a pothole. It is patterning, and that's beneficial. That comes in handy. That is necessary. So some of our subconscious patterning is necessary, but then there's the other side of it where my subconscious patterning is, I'm not good enough. Nobody really likes me. I don't have any value. I'm worthless. Those kind of things. Those are tricks and tools that I used in order to make sense of my world when I was a younger person, or yesterday. Those are tools and I created these habits in alignment with reinforcing those beliefs about myself. And then that reinforcement around those beliefs in myself became a pattern, became a habit. And now I'm subconsciously living with that.
And do you think there's like an age that we sit back and think about these things? Or do you think it's like a life experience that triggers these, like wanting to analyze our past and how we're navigating our current lives?
I've read a few different theories about that. One of my favorite one is for women or individuals with a lot of estrogen in their bodies. How I heard a doctor give this talk. She said that as our hormones change as we get older, we're not like ruled or driven or operating under the influence of all these hormones that are the theory or the idea is that they're asking the body, get pregnant, get pregnant, get pregnant, right? Instead, once we reach like our mid 30s and those hormones start to dwindle or start to shift and start to change, it's like, oh, hell no, I'm not doing that. Absolutely not. I'm not putting up with that. I'm not like this doesn't fit. This doesn't feel right. And then around in our 40s or 45, sometimes people call that a midlife crisis. The old patterning is so obviously doesn't fit anymore. And so that's when we either step into, this is where Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about, around our 40s, maybe our late 40s or early 50s, we can either hold on and grasp to our old patterning so that we don't have to actually disengage from those habitual thinking patterns. We can either observe them and then start to work with them, mold them, change and shift, grow, somebody might call it, go to therapy, or not. And that's when, instead of, when that happens, when we choose not to look at our old patterning, our old habits, they don't fit us. And then we become avoidant of them. And a lot of ways that people become avoidant of them is, and Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about this, they get plastic surgery on their face, they change their face, or they get a fancy new car, or they quit their jobs and travel around the world. Like, we have these reactions to try to not feel the discomfort of our old patterning and our old habitual tendencies. So yeah, there's like, in theory, there's an age. But I mean, you talk to someone like Kendall, or Freya, and they're, babies, and they're already exploring all this self-observation. So I don't know. I don't know. I know for me, I think I started really paying attention when I was in right before my first teacher training. I started paying attention. So I was probably 30 when I first started paying attention. But it's an ever unwinding path. I mean, I've got 40 years of updating I need to do.
Right. Yeah, I would say like my self-study started pretty early, but it feels like I'm 31 now. We'll be 32 pretty soon. But it's almost like thinking about people that I used to relate to so much, I no longer do. And that's having to become a conscious choice of mine, and like pretty confrontational in certain situations, which I'm okay with. I'm pretty okay with, but it might be uncomfortable for others.
Yeah, actually, Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about that, how when we decide to change our habits, let's say I have a friend and all we do is get together and we drink coffee and we gossip about people. There's so many, and we meet at 9 o'clock in the morning after I've slept in until 8. There's so many habits involved in that being a thing. Like, one, maybe I decide I don't want to drink coffee anymore. Then that relationship is going to change or shift in some way. Let's say I don't want to talk about and gossip about people, places, and things anymore. Then that dynamic is also going to change. Let's also, what if I getting up earlier and I decide to go to 6 a.m. yoga instead of 9:30 yoga? That's also going to change the relationships. And that's one of the reasons why we are so, I'm going to use the word addicted. We're so addicted to maintaining the habits that we already have, because there's so much potential for loss in the world that we've created, that we exist in, before we change the habits. Like that friend, if I'm not gossiping with them, or I'm not drinking coffee with them, or I'm not starting my day at 8 a.m. anymore, all of those variables will affect that relationship. And I might lose that relationship. So when we start to self-observe and like things don't fit anymore, like it doesn't fit for me to not like myself. It doesn't fit anymore. I've got to work on that because it doesn't feel good. It doesn't fit. My body is working really hard to make that true. And all that extra energy that's working so hard to make it true, to find evidence that nobody likes me and I don't like myself, finding evidence for that is a hard work. Because if I let myself open up to the possibility that that's untrue, then I start to observe, oh my gosh, my dogs are obsessed with me. Somebody likes me. Everything's okay. If that makes sense.
Yeah. So I guess how do we get there as individuals? Reading?
I don't think that's for everyone though. I don't think there's one way. I think that's one of the really beautiful things about, you could you could look at it through, through words of wisdom written by, wise sages. Some people might need it from, well, okay. So Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about how let me start over. Put a break in this. Let's start from this point. So Yogi Bhajan, Lee Malice told me this quote. Yogi Bhajan says, you can either change by intuition or you'll be forced into change. So we can operate on our same operating system. We can keep going as we keep going. But eventually, if I'm not paying attention, something is going to command me to change. Something is going to happen. If I'm not paying attention, something is going to happen. Oprah often talks about how first the universe will throw like ping pong balls at you, and then it's like tennis balls, and then eventually it's bowling balls. Like you're gonna get, there are gonna be things, there are gonna be feelings that don't feel right, and we have to suppress them to keep going on as we are, or we can listen to them. And I think that's one of the really great benefits of yoga, is that we spend so much time absently or purposefully being in our bodies and breathing and actually feeling like it doesn't feel good to do a split. I'm not going to do it. That means that I'm in my body and I can feel what's going on in my body. That's like the gateway to opening up towards feeling like it doesn't feel good to talk bad to myself. How do I change this pattern? So I think, how do we do it? It starts by just paying attention. And here's the other thing about it is there's no shame in this. I really love this talk that I heard by Krishna Das, where someone was saying, oh, my son is doing XYZ and he's just suffering and he's in pain and he's hurting himself and he just won't come out of it. I can't do anything for him. He won't listen to me. And Krishna Das is like, okay, well, he'll heal it or he won't. He'll deal with it or he won't. Like it's not going anywhere. Eventually it's going to be inevitable. Eventually we have to deal with things not fitting anymore.
And that's where the whole like idea of suppressing certain things, like you think of the iceberg metaphor, where it's like underneath the water, you have a whole basically mountain of ice and it's only the tip of the iceberg that shows. And that would be like your conscious way of living. But there's so much more that goes into it. And I do think, like you mentioned, loss as being a theme and like when you're consciously reprogramming. But also I think loss that's inevitable and unexpected in our lives, like that's a huge factor in what can push us to rethink all of these things.
Yeah, they're opportunities, they're catalysts towards changing. We don't have to, and it's okay if we don't. It's okay if I don't change things about myself. It's okay if I don't grow. I will have another opportunity. It's not a one and done. It's not like a missed opportunity. Maybe today I'm like, I don't want to do this. Okay, fine. It will come back eventually in another way, maybe the same way. But we don't have to change. We don't have to.
Okay, so this is going to be a major backtrack, but I kind of want you to tell our listeners about you and your journey, like finding yoga and how that ties into this, because I think that's going to speak to a lot of what we're talking about.
Okay. Well, so like you want me to go back to family stuff?
No. You don't have to
Okay.
to anything you don't want to. I just think we want to know, because you are so, like, for those of you who don't know TJ, I mean, I feel like you're the most well-read yoga practitioners I've ever met. And like, you've been with Highland Yoga for so long and people really flock to you. And I think it's for a reason. So I just want you to share with those of us who maybe don't even know your name or haven't seen you, what you're all about and like the way you view yoga and healing and all of that.
Okay. Yeah. I started practicing yoga at a gym. I started practicing at Lifetime Fitness when I was 26. And I knew I wanted to do it because I idealized the idea of being a hippie. I thought it was cool. And then I liked it. I liked it a lot. The first thing I noticed was that the way I spoke to myself changed. The words I used in my head towards myself changed. It wasn't, if before there were 100 unkind things I would say to myself before yoga, after I started practicing, there were 70 unkind things I would say to myself. And that's huge. That's huge. I mean, even if we could say one less unkind thing to ourselves, that would be huge. But it was such a dramatic difference. So then I was addicted. Loved it. I needed it. I practiced at this studio in Denver called Kindness, and it'd be like 105 degrees in the studio, and I'd walk out and it would be snowing, and it was just like the coolest. It was like the coolest experience. And then I came to Atlanta and I started practicing at a studio that hyper focused on alignment and lineage of the practice and shadow work. My teacher was very into shadow work. And so I dove into that as well. And diving into shadow work, the shadows don't go away. There
Could
isn't
you
like
explain what shadow work is for those of us not familiar?
shadow work. I would call it, I would say that it's just looking at the things that I don't want to present to society. So looking at these traits about myself that at the time or now that feel vulnerable or feel offensive to others or feel things I'm ashamed of. Things I'm ashamed of. The deep dark secrets. And there's like the me I noticed that there was the me that was who I presented to the world, and she was bright and shiny, and she never wore black clothes, and she was nice to everyone, and she was nice. And then there was the me who was angry. There's the me that was harmful to myself. There's the me that was judgmental. Like there was this part of me that I didn't show anyone, but she was there. That shadow self. That was the part. I guess maybe when we talk about shadow work, it's the part of me, if we want a visual, that I put behind me in the shadow. While the part of me I present in the sun, and then the part of me I don't present, she lives behind me in the shadows. And so I started doing a lot of shadow work, and I just realized that it's not, to me, it actually wasn't that big of a deal. Like, let's see, one of my biggest first time shadow work things, I'm gonna need a second to remember this. Hold on. Oh, okay. So one of my very first big realizations with shadow work is I realized that I was keeping myself small so that I would never outgrow the relationship I had with my father, that I would never outgrow the maturity of my father, that I would never outgrow my father. And like, that's no big deal. Like, to me now, saying that, I mean, this is 10 years ago, but saying it now, it's like, anyone could know that. I could write that on my car as a bumper sticker. Like, I don't care. But at the time that felt so vulnerable and so, intense and raw. But then once I realized that on a visceral level, through the practice of self-observation with the help of therapy, I was able to see it, name it, and decide it didn't fit anymore, and change my subconscious patterning, which my subconscious patterning was, nope, don't do that. You're going to get too big and then you'll outgrow your dad. Nope, don't do that. You'll get too big. You'll outgrow your dad. Instead, it was like, oh, I can go do this thing. I can go be this person. I can ask for this in my life. So, yeah.
Yeah. And
That's
I think like, I think a lot of us don't even get to a point where we're able to talk about these things. Like I remember I was in a therapy setting and it was actually like supervision when I was acting as a therapist, but it was like once a week we sat down in a circle and our supervisor basically like pulled things out of us emotionally, like asked us questions. And I remember that was a point in my life where I hadn't talked about this like programming within myself at all. And I don't remember the question he asked me, but I just like burst out in tears. And I remember he asked me, he was really good at asking questions. And he was like, why do you think you just got so emotional? And I was like, because these words have never left my mouth my entire life. So it's like, we think, and these things are a part of us. And it's like, we go so long. I mean, for me at that time, my entire life before I was able to like externalize some of these things and get feedback on it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the growth comes, is like when you can share that with someone and you can hear that like, oh, that's normal, or, oh, me too, you know?
I had a therapist that would always say, that's not a you thing. Like, I'm not the only one who experiences that. That's not a you thing. This is a collective consciousness thing. Like, this is a common thing. Yeah, that's super powerful. And like, how much energy was your body using to blind that spot or that phrase or those words from your conscious thinking mind?
It takes a lot of effort.
A lot of effort. It takes a lot of effort to pretend that we don't see ourselves. So that was part. And then when I started doing the shadow work with my teacher, just to go back to my yoga journey, then we had she and I had this explosion, which actually is one of the greatest gifts of my life, because I was then forced to step into myself. I couldn't lean on anyone, which is something I had been doing my whole life. So she helped me. That explosion of our relationship helped me do something I was really uncomfortable doing, which was depend on myself and rely on myself. And that simultaneously, that also coincided with me teaching at Highland Yoga. And the way that Elsie and John managed me was leave me alone, let me do a good job kind of thing, stand on your own. If we see something, we'll call you out on it. And it was the perfect way for me to find what I was interested in, follow what my body was telling me, follow what my subconscious patterning was showing me. So it's my self-observation journey is directly tied with Highland Yoga. Directly. And when I share in class, the things I share, I'm like just talking to myself. Like, what I'm sharing is things I need to hear and I'm working on what I need to do for myself.
Yeah. So, what year did you start with Highland? You remember?
I mean, no, I thought I had my 10-year anniversary the other day, and Elsie was like, we've only been open 9 years. Like, okay. I don't know when I started. Probably the beginning. I think I started like maybe 6 or 8 months after Highland opened.
Okay.
It was still when it was just the one location and Elsie was teaching like 72 classes a week. And Tracy Sharp and Elsie.
And now we have a podcast.
And yeah. Yeah. Wild.
That's really cool though. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, shadow work, is a new phrase to me. So thanks for sharing about that.
Yeah.
And I want to go back to reprogramming. Like you mentioned, sometimes you don't choose it for yourself, sometimes you do. Where do we go from there?
So Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about this, how, I could choose to pay attention right now, today. You could choose to pay attention right now, today, or not. And if you choose to pay attention today, then you or me or whomever has an opportunity to witness the things that they're avoiding. So there doesn't have to be some huge catalyst. There doesn't have to be like a tree getting struck by lightning in your backyard and it ruins your garden. I don't know. That was the dumbest example. But it doesn't have to be like a car accident or a house burning down. It doesn't have to be some big giant thing to have the courage to observe oneself. It can be, you know what? My stomach hurts right now. Why does my stomach hurt right now? What am I doing? Or, you know what? This person, every time they text me or they call me, I don't want to answer it or I don't want to respond. Why? Or every time I sit down to watch Netflix, I have to have my phone in my hand and scroll. I'm wanting extra stimulation. What am I emotionally addicted to right now? It has to do with just observing what we're doing. So that's what you and I talked about, ritual versus habit. And there is a gift in, according to Ayurvedic medicine, there is a gift in ritual. There's a gift in routine. Because in the space of routine and in the space of ritual, like every morning, this is not me, I do not do this, but let's just say this is someone. Every morning I get up and I go to 6 a.m. yoga. Then I come home, I walk my dogs, I take a shower, I make coffee, I head to work. I'm at work all day, I have lunch. And then when I get home, I change my clothes, I make myself my lunch for tomorrow and my dinner, and then I read my book, and then I go to sleep. So that's my ritual. That's my routine. The difference between that and subconscious patterning is, am I consciously engaging with it? Am I making choices and consciously engaging with my choices, or am I just operating on autopilot? And one of the benefits of having routine, having ritual, is that if I'm doing the same thing every day, then I can watch how my mind and my body change and shift as I do the same thing every day. And that gives, why am I angry today? Why do I not want to eat healthy tomorrow? Why do I not want to make my lunch for tomorrow and just order pizza? Those kind of things. Because if I want to just order pizza, it could be because I'm having some emotional reaction to my life, or it could be because I need some more fat in my diet, or it could be because I want the chemicals that are in cheese because they, boost boost serotonin in your body. So it doesn't matter that it doesn't matter that I'm changing or want to change my routine, but what matters is, can I take the time and the space and the stillness to figure out the why behind the why?
And I also think like examining your routines, that's another thing that like sometimes that can serve you. And there was a point in your life where it did. Like in my case, my life became very regimented because I needed it to be in order to like function and hold a job and all those things. And now I'm no longer in that place, and I'm still so almost too routine oriented to where if I step outside of that, like there's a level of anxiety that comes with it, or like, oh, I'm no longer in control of like of what's going on right now. And it's like it goes back to what you said in the very beginning. Like we seek what is familiar, and any form of change is just uh scary in its purest form, I think, for people.
Yeah, of course. I mean, change is also, especially emotional change is is painful. It's painful to change things. Why is moving one of the most stressful things we can do? Like there's a list of things that are stressful in the body and stressful in the mind and emotionally stressful. Moving is one of them. Even though moving is fun sometimes. Not like moving a couch, but the idea of like an adventure and doing something new. Travel. They say if you really want to know someone, travel with them, because that's someone who's handling or maneuvering through the unknown, through the impossibility of of keeping something synced, the impossibility of being in control. It's someone who has to succumb to the possibility of change. And then there's also what you said, Reedy, that when you step outside of your routine, and it can cause or lead to feelings of anxiety. There's so many different layers in that too. Like sometimes routine is to emotionally regulate. How beautiful is that? How incredible is it that you've learned how to emotionally regulate yourself? Right? Like it's like when my dog is watching TV and an animal comes on the screen, she has to go get a toy and squish it because she has to emotionally regulate herself. Like that's her way of expressing all the whatever it is for her in that moment safely, right? So you having a routine is you emotionally regulating yourself to do what you can. It's like Olaf in Frozen 2. We're controlling what we can control when things are out of control. Right. So there's benefit to it. But then there's also another opportunity is like, why does stepping out of my routine trigger feelings of anxiety? Well, there's an opportunity. Once you feel that or notice that, you could keep going with your routine. Fine. Or maybe if you notice that, not necessarily step out of your routine or throw it in the trash, but just notice it and then ask why. What's the why behind the why of that anxiety? Like, what's the truth there? Because that's probably that deep, dark secret that's stored away inside, just lifting weights, waiting to be revealed.
Right.
Getting stronger and stronger and bigger until it wants to be revealed, or until it just can't stay contained anymore.
Totally.
But also, again, you never have to do it either. You don't have to. There's so many ways to turn away and stay content, or some version of content in each moment. And it's okay to do that. It's not wrong. We don't have to look at all of the things we could change about ourselves. I don't have to look at my patterning that I learned when I was 3. I don't have to. I will be okay. Things will be okay. I can modify and shift. It's okay. But if I want to.
And also we don't have to do it all at once. Like it might be we have to confront like some aspect of our subconscious given a very specific situation, and it's like, oh, okay, we note that and then we move on with our lives, and then a year later something else happens, you know.
Yeah, there's a lot in my experience. There's a lot of power in naming a feeling. Naming, like if I step out of my routine, it tends to lead towards feelings of anxiety. Just simply naming that shifts and changes it automatically. You're literally changing the frequency of that emotion immediately.
Yeah, and as I've mentioned, like I've mentioned in previous episodes here, like if you do it incrementally, it's like the anxiety that you meet going outside of your routine, each time it becomes smaller and smaller the more you can name it and like move past it and integrate that in your understanding of things. So yeah, I think you're right. Like it's all about noticing and asking why. And I really think yoga and meditation is how we get there. I'm trying to think of other ways. Like I think mine being mindful in relationships and other things, but yoga and meditation for me feels like the strongest way. And I know we're extremely biased. But yeah.
Well, another part of it too is in order for us to actually make permanent changes to our subconscious thinking patterns, our nervous system has to be in what you've talked about before, like that parasympathetic nervous system state. We have to be in a rest and digest. We have to be in a theta brainwave state in order for, I mean, this is as far as I know, in order for us to change. We can't be in fight or flight, because if we're in fight or flight, then the parts of our brain that make those changes to our patterning aren't online. We're in our reptilian brain. We are making it through. We have to be in a restful state, which is why meditation and yoga are like such a prominent way to do this. But we have to be in a calm nervous system state to even be able to feel, think, or process that something's off, something could change. I have an opportunity here. But like if I'm in a fight with my husband, I'm not I'm not going to back down, and I'm too prideful, and I'm not very good at that. But there's no way that I can calm down and rationalize my thinking. I'm in attack mode. I'm in fight or flight. There's no space for me to be calm and be like, actually, you're right. The trash does come on Tuesday.
Yeah, it's hard to process these things when stress is like our main experience. Like you think if it's been taught like our stress temperature, see a picture of a thermometer, and it's like when your stress is all the way at the top and pouring out, like you're not going to be able to do some of that deeper processing. Mm-hmm. So that's another way that yoga ties in, I think.
Yeah. And everything, when things are stressful, we tend to make more impulsive decisions based on our subconscious thinking patterns. So, in the advertisement industry, it's based on putting us in a stress nervous system state. So we make impulsive decisions. So everything around us is actually not everything, but a lot of things around us are designed to stress us out so that we're not in our bodies, that we're not actually thinking well and from a place of opportunity for change. So it takes a lot. And when we come to yoga, it's just this little bliss bubble.
Yeah, and a lot of those things that are advertised to us that stress us out are also what help us suppress what's going on. Like it does both.
Yes, that's so true.
We love that stuff.
Well, there's also the emotional addiction.
Right.
It helps reinforce the emotional addictions that we have. Like people are emotional. Myself, I am a person who's emotionally addicted to being unhappy, which is wild to me because I feel like I'm a happy person, but I have this emotional addiction to being unhappy. And it's something that I have to observe as I'm practicing right now, practicing observing it. But if I do get that dose to reinforce the addiction to being unhappy, I'm unhappy dose. Let's say it's a drug. I've got I'm unhappy drug and I get a hit of it. Cool. I get a hit of it again. Cool. But then it's not strong enough. I got to have more. So I do more things to reinforce that I'm unhappy. And it just gets bigger and bigger until, again, it doesn't fit anymore. And I can either change or not.
Yeah. And going back to like the functioning on autopilot, I think you said like 5% of our day is conscious choice.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering like, where is that edge between what level of autopilot is actually helping us navigate through our day effectively and what level is distracting us from what's actually going on and like paying attention to what's actually there, So I think that's a big struggle.
That's real. Such a good question. That's such a good question. What do you think?
What do I think?
You know, I remember reading this article, Free People, oh God, like so long ago. I don't even know. I was probably like 26. So close to 20 years ago. Free People, I remember they used to have like a blog on their website or something. I don't remember exactly. And it was a blog about mindfulness. And the writer of this blog, this article talked about being mindful as you're stirring your soup or folding your laundry. And I remember being like, that's such BS. That's not enough. Like, oh, I'm stirring my soup. That's not enough. But now I'm full circle and like it kind of is, right? It kind of is enough to, while I'm driving my car, notice that I'm looking in the rearview mirror. Pick one thing to notice. Notice that I'm pressing the gas pedal.
Yeah, and I've had it taught to me before, like do something mindful for 1 hour out of your day, whether that's
Yeah.
a walk or
A yoga
a
class.
yoga class.
Well, that's one of the reasons that I practice and instruct with alignment cues, because if someone is interested in paying attention to those alignment cues, it's a call back to the body. It's a call back to being in that pose, not operating on habit. Do I like practicing that way? No, not all the time. I like a class where I'm just, breathing and moving. But I think that there's a lot of benefit to the alignment in the yoga, because in the postures, because it gives an opportunity to purposefully engage with stirring the soup, pressing the gas pedal.
Yeah, that's really well put. I should probably
No, your classes are perfect.
I was
Don't
gonna say I
change
need
them. I love your
I'm
classes.
like, what's alignment?
No, not
No,
true.
no. But yeah, I think everyone has their own style and way of relating to what we're teaching. So what are your tips on how can we're going over like the general theme here. How do we notice patterns that are not helping us and habits? And how do we begin to change our habits and live a more authentic life?
Well, let's go with what you and I kind of came with up together. Or to me, it felt like it was both of us talking about it together. Like pick one thing, like when you make your coffee in the morning, or your chai, or your cup of water with lemon. Check in, have a checklist. How do I feel today? How does my stomach feel? How do my feet feel? How do I feel after my sleep last night? Just a moment of doing something that's part of a routine, part of a ritual, but then asking a question to open up a conversation with oneself. So even driving to work. Okay, cool. As soon as I get in my car, I'm drive to work, I'm on autopilot. No big deal. Fine. Put it in my Google Maps. I'll listen. But then have a list of questions that feel important to someone. So for me, it would be, what do I feel like today? For me, I might ask, how's my heart today? How do I feel about my day? How does my stomach feel? And just let those questions marinate. And if the same questions are asked every day, inevitably, eventually there will be different answers. And when the answers are different, then why? Why don't I feel well today? Why does my stomach hurt today? Do I have anxiety? Am I nervous? Did I eat something bad? Like there's opportunity to just practice observing. And once you start opening up and becoming comfortable with conversation with oneself, then maybe it'll be more doable.
Yeah. And
And
I
I don't
think what you
remember.
mentioned earlier is important. Like when you talked about your first experiences with yoga and how you were starting to recognize your self-talk patterns and like recognizing that those were decreasing. I think you could even sit down and write down, what am I saying to myself during this yoga class, or like right when I wake up in the
Ooh,
morning, like what's my first thought when I get out of bed, writing that down.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
good. I like it. I like it. I don't remember what your second question was, though.
I
Sorry.
think I'm like, do I remember? How do we change our habits in a way where we can live a more authentic life?
Authenticity is this word that gets thrown around a lot. And I think that authenticity is one of the most difficult things for me in my experience. Not that I'm not inauthentic. It's that when I abandon myself, when I ignore myself or tell myself, when I gaslight myself, then I am being inauthentic. I have now shifted from authentic to inauthentic. And so to maintain authenticity would involve the process of paying attention to when I'm not listening to myself, when I'm not checking in with myself. How do I feel about this? Am I doing this for me or am I doing this for them? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does make sense. And I think like getting honest with your core values and all these fun little exercises. But yeah, do you have anything else you would like to share with our community to wrap things up? Maybe like a book recommendation.
Oh yeah.
You could tell us when you teach at the studio.
I teach like 10 classes.
Okay, well, never mind. Look her up on our website.
I think Self-Observation by Red Hawk is an incredible book. That's the book that got me on the journey, but it reads a little sporadic to me. I appreciate I guess maybe a more grounded way of reading. I don't know what to say there. I appreciate a more grounded style of writing. How about that? I really love Dr. Joe Dispenza. All of his books that I've read, I'm obsessed with. I really loved a lot What Happened to You by Oprah and Dr. Bruce Perry. As far as breaking emotional addictions, I think a good starting place would be that book that I put in the newsletter that you asked me for in the newsletter, How to Disentangle from Emotionally Immature People. That one's really great because sometimes self-observation starts with watching what we don't like in other people. Because if we don't like it in someone else, it probably and generally means that we don't like it in ourselves.
Oh yeah.
So disentangling from emotionally immature people. I didn't realize I was on my high horse and I was like, I'm not emotionally immature. But then I read that book and I was like, I'm really emotionally immature. I have a lot of growth.
I love that.
So that even though it was like disentangling from other people, it ended up being more about myself. So that was a cool experience. But I guess that's enough. Like 5 books.
That is definitely, we have a starting place. Like I better get reading.
Well, if
TJ,
you do read the What Happened to You by Oprah and Dr. Bruce Perry, it's a really good audible because it's Oprah and him just talking through the book. It's really good. Yeah.
You can do that while you're driving.
You know, while you're driving.
Is that autopilot or is that acceptable?
It's always acceptable.
Well, TJ, I have really enjoyed this conversation. A lot of things I hadn't talked about before. And I know our listeners are really going to enjoy this one. And I enjoyed speaking with you because I really only see you in passing at the studio. So this was super fun for me. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Reedy. Thanks for talking to me too.
Yeah, we'll see
I love
next
you.
week, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much for tuning into the podcast. Your support really does matter. This podcast is produced by Highland Yoga with music by our very own teaching team member, Lauren C. If you want to learn more about Highland Yoga, visit our website at highland-yoga.com or email us to sign up for our weekly newsletter at info@highland-yoga.com. See you next week for more of Find Your Flow.